What's up, everyone, and welcome to another Fuse Meet session. I hope you're all doing really well out there in the cryptoverse. Today, you're here with me, Ian Kane, and in this session, we'll be chatting with founding member of the FuseDAO, Rob Brown. So I'm just going to do a little sound check. How are we doing, Rob? You good today?
Yeah, very good, very good. Currently on holiday, so this is the only thing I'm doing in August. So it's good to be here, Ian.
Oh wow, man! I feel privileged. So we've broken your holiday silence to do a chat. That's amazing. Thank you. Love that dedication. Not sure I would have been doing the same, but cool nonetheless. Let's do.
You're special. You're special, Ian. It's special to be here.
Oh, I feel it. I'm feeling the love. I'm feeling the love. The Fuse Network's feeling the love, definitely. So very cool. Very cool. So for those of you that don't know, perhaps you've never tuned into one of these sessions, and this is your first time, Fuse Network is a pretty unique blockchain. We aim to bridge the gap between crypto and the real world. The tech stack, along with the new charge product, is tailored to help small to medium-sized business and large business as well. The idea is that we're helping you to embrace Web3 crypto payments, reduce the cost of your sales, and help you build out better customer rewards and loyalty schemes, all with very small amount of knowledge of smart contracts and coding, you'll be glad to hear. So the FuseDAO is part of the Fuse ecosystem and primarily assists developers and project teams in building and launching open source projects on Fuse. It's headed by our man, Rob Brown. So we've got him in today to talk about the DAO and the future plans and what's kind of been happening since it's launched as well. So with that in mind, it's time to jump off. So, Rob, always love to start at the beginning and leave the more technical chats just for a little bit later. So yeah. I would really love to know about yourself, man. Like, who are you? How did you end up at the top of the FuseDAO? And perhaps kind of what were your first interactions with blockchain, crypto, and that kind of stuff? Like, when did you jump into the rabbit hole, maybe is the question.
Yeah, so my background's in software. I did a PhD in material science, and part of that, and this is a long time ago now. Part of that was computer programming. I was modeling some reactions, and out of that, I got into software. So my kind of career from then on has been in business consulting, software consulting, contracting, things like that. And the last project I worked on was a data warehouse project, and that came to an end around about 2018-ish, 2017, 2018. It kind of fully matured, and I was looking for the next kind of opportunity. And I kind of remembered the early days of Bitcoin, and I remember the kind of the articles in the kind of the computer magazines when it first came out. I was thinking, I'll kind of revisit this because I kind of missed the boat on it. 2018 was the time of the kind of the big bull, and I thought I'll kind of revisit this and see what kind of opportunities are out there in blockchain. And being, I've always kind of like building stuff, so kind of a lot of my kind of work has been about building projects and products and things like that. And I thought, looking around, what can we do locally in terms of where I live with blockchain technology, and that's where I first kind of came across Kulu. Quite a lot of research in terms of trying to navigate and understand the kind of crypto space at the time, because it was growing rapidly, loads of stuff going on. So it took me a while, but I found Kulu. And Mark Smargan was one of the kind of founding members of Kulu. So got in contact. We looked at creating a local currency where I live, and kind of developed business plans and things like that. But it didn't come to kind of fruition due to kind of various different issues with legislation locally and things like that. But I stayed in contact with Mark, and as he kind of rolled out the blockchain side of things in Fuse, stayed with it, and we were the first kind of external validators on the Fuse network. So instead of kind of going down the business side and kind of working with Fuse on products, I stayed on the technical side, started running nodes, working on infrastructure at the early stages, testing, developing things like that. So I've kind of been with it from the beginning, really.
From the early days, right?
Yeah, the early days.
Yeah. That's an insane little journey there. So when did you get into, so you were doing programming and you're obviously using those languages. Did you flip? Was there a moment when you started using Solidity or looking at Ethereum programming languages, or when did you? Or
so I've never been a programmer. So I've always been in that kind of that space in the middle between business and tech.
Okay. Okay.
Applying technology, working with business, what can we use this for? So that type of space, for contracting, consulting, in that type of space.
Got it.
When it came to Fuse, I'm not, obviously I can do technical stuff, but I'm not a programmer. I've never said I'm a programmer. You know, in all the kind of work I've had, I've always been an applications type guy.
Okay.
How is this useful? How is this software useful? What can you do with it? What's the benefits? And that's what really attracted me to Kulu initially, and then to Fuse. Like, what can we do with it? Well, we can create local currencies, local economies. You can use it. You can do it on a tiny scale for your local football club, or for your local team, or for your local community group, with, you know, for virtually no cost. You know, and that's what attracted me. It's like, how can you apply blockchain and make it usable and useful to people? And that's exactly what Fuse is doing. You know, and that's the thing that really kind of engaged me.
Couldn't agree more, Mark. Like, that's that's the point, I think, where you're trying to, people need something that they want to use, but the people such as yourself, Rob, are the most important, the person who sits between the technical people and the consumer. I think it's a very important role that you play, because sometimes technical people and developers are not customer minded. They think about the technology first rather than how it can be used in the real world, right? Whereas, and that's why I think people such as yourself are super important, because the business case is what it's all about. You can build the coolest tech in the world, but if it's not useful, then it's not useful. So I get it with that. That's what attracted me to Fuse too. It's the real world application. I mean, in regards to that, and a bit of an off-piece question, you know, you were drawn towards this, you've spoken about local economies and kind of the keeping money. Is that a value that's important to you as a human being? And like, what you want to work towards is more equality and letting businesses keep more of their margins and not be forced, as it were, to use monopolistic services. Is that something that's ethically important to you as well?
So I think the main thing that's important to me is resilience. So resilience of economies, and also freedom. I think that's a really important thing. So freedom in terms of, are we always able to buy and sell freely? And I think that's a fundamental thing that is not guaranteed anymore. And I think that's kind of the key thing that kind of drives me, is that, so what are the options out there should people be restricted from buying and selling? I think, you know, local economies are one way of doing that. You know, how do you kind of how do you flesh out a barter system into a more kind of structured, trustworthy system that has, you know, a bit more structure? You know, you can do it through crypto, you can do it through things like that. I think, you know, without getting kind of too kind of political, I think if you look at things like Canada, where people had their bank accounts shut down because they were protesting, you think of the COVID restrictions and things like that, you can see how quickly governments can go totalitarian and shut you down just because you disagree with what they're doing. And if you go to FusePrime.com, which is the website, my website address, you'll see in terms of governance, one of the key things that I've always had is that in terms of governance, I will never vote for whatever it is. I will never vote for restricting people's access to buying and selling. You know, so there'll be no kind of user agreement you have to go into to say we're going to agree to all of these things before we use your system. I think the beauty of crypto is that you don't have to have that. And it gives you that freedom. So I mean, it's a little bit kind of on the scary end of things, but I think, you know, it is, we need to, I think as a society, we need to have these options available. And I think certainly from my perspective, Fuse does allow people to create these economies, these local economies, or these other economies, these other ways of transacting, that will enable them to do that freely in the future, as potentially restrictions come in.
That's it. And I think I've been having these conversations with multiple people over the last couple of months, actually, about payments and Visa and monopolies. And, you know, I always tended, like, as you did there as well, Rob, we all caveat those things with, we don't want to be too scary, or we don't want to be like alarming or anything. But when I think about it, actually, I'm like, we're not being alarming. We're just telling the truth. And it's like, we shouldn't caveat ourselves, because it's an important message, I believe, that people need to understand. And I think we need to then come with a solution, right? And it's I just always find myself caveating it, and then I think, hang on, Why do I do that? Like, I don't need to do that. It's
Yeah.
reality, and we have a solution. And like you said, the bartering system of old evolved to where we are now, and we don't really like it anymore. So we need to shift, right, and make a change. So
Yeah, I think these things sound a little bit kind of conspiratory theory, don't they? You sound a little bit kind of crazy. But you know, if you look at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, they had one of the kind of the major central banks on there talking about central bank digital currencies and what they can do with them. Well, what they can do with them in terms of blockchain tech is they can see every transaction that you're doing, and they can limit the amount of alcohol you're buying. They can limit the amount of cigarettes you're buying or whatever, because it's unhealthy or it's outside of your personal allowance. And I think that's what they're talking about doing. That's the potential that they're looking to do with. So these things aren't conspiracy. These are things that people are thinking about the opportunities that will raise, and the ways of you know, controlling what people can do. Yeah.
It's the way it'll change the world as well as we move forward, and we're trying to prepare ourselves for these structures, I think. So it's good that we're having these open conversations, I believe, Rob. It's an important time, I think. I'm sure other men and women have said it's an important time at all points in history, but it generally feels like a pretty important time right now. But all right, cool. So thank you for that. I really always like to start with getting an idea of like who it is I'm talking to and what their kind of belief system is and stuff like that. So thank you for filling those gaps in. But now, tell us what FuseDAO is. Like, what is it, Rob? What does it do? What are the functions? Like, what are we here talking about today with FuseDAO?
So the FuseDAO started about a year ago. I suppose the Fuse team drew together the 6 original members of the FuseDAO, and we're all long-standing kind of members of the community. So it's me, it's another validator. I think it's 2 more validators. In fact, I think actually all of us are validators now. So we're all kind of well invested in the Fuse network, and we're all active in the community, and we kind of came together. And the fundamental thing is we are a grant body. So we have been given a sum of Fuse by the Fuse team, the Fuse Foundation, I should say, the Fuse Foundation, and we have been assigned a task of distributing that to projects that are going to grow the Fuse ecosystem. So that was kind of the broad remit in version 1. So we'll talk about version 1 and version 2. So version 1 was the first implementation. It was really, we were given the Fuse Foundation funding and like, just get on with it. Okay. And that's quite, that's quite an open remit. And so we had to go through this whole process of figuring out what are we, how do we work, you know, how do we communicate? How do we meet up? How do we decide things? How do we make decisions? All this type of process. And you know, even though there's 6 of us, there's 7 different ideas. You know, it's really difficult, and we're a whole spectrum of people.
So the team is quite different in terms of the structure. The people in the team, are they vastly different, or like?
I think ideologically very broad. You know, we've got people who are very kind of decentralized crypto ideology. We've got people who are very ethically minded, can't get involved in kind of Ponzi DeFi stuff, which is you know, has been the rage for a long time. And so we have these conversations, you know, and it, you know, it's hard work. For the first year, essentially, it was like almost full time for me. And when we started off, also we were looking at all these projects that came to us with a white paper, and you'd have to go through and you have to kind of create a business plan for them. It's huge overheads. So yeah, I mean, I'm probably talking too much, but yeah, essentially we give out grants.
So V1 was the first iteration where you kind of needed to get to know each other possibly, and also understand what are we doing here, and probably just to all get on the same page about what the motion was and the plan, right? So then V2 comes along and you guys are a little bit tighter knit. And what's the objectives of V2 then, Rob? Like what's the core?
So the first funding has all been distributed now or assigned. So we've essentially done that job, and we've learned, you know, a huge amount through this process. So we're much stricter now in terms of what we'll be looking for. So we're looking for like MVPs. You know, there's no point coming to us with a white paper and an idea because we just don't have the, you know, capacity to manage that. MVP, existing project, like a history in crypto, things like this. So there's a criteria that we're looking for. And V2 hasn't yet started yet, so we haven't yet kind of started V2. It's in the process of being arranged and organised, but we're going to be working much more closely with the Fuse Foundation, the Fuse team, and there'll be a slight delineation between the projects. So Fuse Foundation, they will be offering grants as well, and their grants will be looking at projects who are going to use the Fuse tech stack, so the Fuse wallet, the APIs in Charge Web3, the new website, and larger projects that need more technical investment, more funding potentially, and looking at real world applications. So things like people, who I think you interviewed Leon.
Speaking with Leon next week,
cool. So those type of kind of real world applications that need investment in kind of tech, in time, in closeness with the Fuse team. Whereas the DAO, the FuseDAO grants, we're looking primarily at Fuse community. So that's the community that's already existing on Fuse itself. So what can we do when you're on chain? What do you want to do when you're on chain? Is it NFTs? Is it kind of DeFi stuff? That type of area. And the interesting thing there is that you have this pipeline. So we're trying to generate this pipeline from the real world applications that people use, and people get into crypto through that, and then what they can then move on to on-chain activities, DeFi, things like that. So it's like an open door. It's like what Good Dollar's doing, or what people are doing, is to have a beautiful app, simple to use, really easy to engage with for any kind of consumer. And then that's an open doorway to get, if you want to get more into what crypto kind of offer in terms of DeFi, decentralized finance, and all that type of stuff. So
kind of different on the approach there as well. Like, I speak to a lot of networks, and it's almost like we flip the approach, because a lot of networks will try to get in those high volume, high transactional count DeFi dApps, for example, as we've said, or high risk dApps, or other types of dApps that general gaming or something like this. And then they do that way. But I actually really like what you're saying, because that's what Fuse is all about. It's about real world projects. So you come in for the real world projects, and you also gain exposure to other projects too. So I think that really shows the Fuse ethos really nicely. So I like the way that's been put together. That's the first time I've heard that. So it's impressive to hear it like that.
That's where growth comes from as well. The crypto market, if you're thinking about growth, getting into crypto, getting a MetaMask, being brave enough to use an exchange, and then moving funds around and all that, 99% of people aren't going to do that. Okay. That your average consumer isn't going to do that. Okay. So crypto's in kind of native on-chain crypto that kind of we're used to and that we use. It's a very niche market. So how do you then expose the rest of the world to cryptos? Through beautiful, simple consumer apps that are easy to understand, that crypto's abstracted, everything's through standard kind of interfaces that they understand. And then the brave ones, or the kind of more interested ones, can then engage in kind of the DeFi side of things if they want to. And so
absolutely. No, it's a good way to approach it, definitely. Just one thing that you said, it really piqued my interest there, and I just wanted to go back to that, is that you were saying that you were scrolling through these white papers, and that you guys don't have the capacity to do that. So you have a criteria for a project that wants to approach you. Could you just outline that criteria not in full detail, but just for people, say I'm a project, I'm looking to approach you. What's that basic minimal requirement I need to have already done before I can come up and have a conversation with you, Rob? What's the kind of level that I need to get to?
So the final kind of criteria hasn't been decided yet, but I would say if you've got an MVP, you've got an existing team, or you've already had a project that's been successful in the past, then that's all good. I think what we're trying to do is filter out the projects and the ideas that are going to take an awful lot of work, an awful lot of time to kind of push forward. And we're looking for, certainly from our side of things, if we're giving a grant to a project, we're looking for it to deliver some type of value within 3 to 6 months. Yeah,
Okay.
this is the FuseDAO. The Fuse Foundation, they have a much longer lead time on that road. They can wait longer as projects kind of grow. But for us as a community DAO, we're looking for kind of 3 to 6 months at the very most.
Right.
And so you would need an MVP at that stage. You can't build a really good project in a short period of time, I don't think.
So you're at the point where you've got all the bits you need, other than perhaps that little push over the finish line in regards to financing, where you're like, right, I've got I know what it is I'm trying to deliver, but we just can't take it that extra step. Launching on Fuse seems logical. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Or there's things like ports as well, so people just porting across from other EVM chains.
Well, that's an option as well, that if somebody's looking, so if they have a dApp that's currently running on an EVM like BNB chain, Poly, or Ethereum, obviously they can just reach out and make that. You also can assist with that porting.
Yeah. Nice. So anything that kind of adds value to the existing Fuse community, on chain DeFi kind of world. So always interested. But like I say, it's on pause at the moment because the second round V2 funding hasn't been arranged. But we're probably September time. I think we'll open that up again and kind of get going. And it'll be a much more streamlined process. So
you learned some lessons from V1, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of lessons. It's hard work. When you're given an open kind of blank piece of paper, where do you go?
Think it's beautiful, right? But it's actually more difficult because
it's hard. Yeah. And also there's been a lot of debate about the value of DAOs, that they bring and things, and how to do governance and things like that. And I think the kind of way the way it's working with the foundation and the DAO in terms of V2, I think that's a nicer way of doing it. So when it comes to voting on projects, we're going to open it up to the whole community, so they'll be able to vote on it as well, rather than just as it was in V1. It was just us 6 guys that were voting on things. So it'll be much more involved, much more kind of organic, much more community focused.
Nice. So V1 had a couple of projects that came out the back of that, right? So you've got a couple of projects that went into launch that actually are now out there in the wild, I guess we could say. And one of those was Allbridge, right? That was one of the projects that you nurtured. There's others as well. Feel free to mention the ones that are like, basically the question is, Rob, is, from V1, what's come out of V1? What are they doing now? What lessons did you learn from those launches? Like, talk to us a little bit about some of the projects that are out there in the wild already.
Yeah, so one of the kind of key ones is Artrific. They were one of the first ones we voted through. So Artrific are a project from Fiberblock, who are one of the major kind of major validators on Phantom Network. And they are expanding onto different chains, and they chose Fuse as their kind of place to expand on. So we provided a grant for them for their Artrific NFT marketplace, and they've also deployed Flux Swap, which is a DeFi swap, and they're kind of building into a kind of exchange type facilities.
Nice.
So what do we learn through Artrific? We learned that there need to be deliverables. That's the key thing. One of the key things is deliverables. Work out what the deliverables are, make sure people stick to it, and don't pay grants until they're delivered. That's a kind of
big lesson. Nice.
And I think I probably have a tendency to be a little bit generous with things, whereas other members of the team are like, no, they haven't done these things, they're not getting a grant. And I think that's a good balance. I'm like, I'll do it. We'll just pay them.
You're the nice one in the game.
I'm a nice guy. So there are others that are just like, no, they haven't done that, so we're not paying them. So that's quite useful. Deliverables, certainly deliverables. Greeners up front, making sure there's no ambiguity in the kind of in that. But it's doing really well. I mean, obviously we're in a bear market and things like that, but in terms of Artrific, they're continuing to develop it, to grow it, to add functionality, to sort out bugs. Like I say, they've deployed, Fiberblock have deployed Flux Swap, which they're continuing to grow as well. That didn't even get a grant. That was just another part of them investing in the ecosystem.
Did they build that? Did they build that to complement the Artrific marketplace? Is that their internal swap feature so people can buy NFTs from there? and now they've just kind of separated the two, or is this a separate project?
It's a separate project, yeah, separate product.
Okay. Nice.
But what they're doing is they're investing in the ecosystem because we offer them a grant and you help them through that whole process and have supported them. They're now continuing to invest in the ecosystem and develop products on it. So
Nice.
that's kind of what one of the features of the DAO is. That's what we're trying to do: build relationships, build partnerships, and secure long-term investment in the ecosystem. And I think that's
good,
crypto is often short-term, pump and dump,
speculative, right?
Speculative, and we're looking for products and projects and teams that are long-term and say, let's do this for 3 years, let's invest for 3 years, let's see where we are in 3 years, let's let the market grow, let the product suite grow, those types of things. So
one of the things, Mark, just talking about speculation, Mark said the other day to me, he was like, technology doesn't need to be speculative. Cryptocurrency can be speculative, but the technology doesn't need to be. We're not hedging bets on world domination here. We're trying to change the way things are done. It's almost like a different outlook on things. And it kind of hit me when he said it. I was like, good point, good point. And just talking about Artrific there, what I really like about their platform is they seem to have set up for the future. They're not pigeonholing themselves as a PFP avatar collection only. It's art, and they've got space there for music and other elements of all the kind of iterations of what we're seeing as NFTs. So I think it's very cool. They're kind of setting up, they're not just going to be like a general kind of basic marketplace. And there's a lot of competition in marketplaces right now. I don't know if you follow that scene at all, but like OpenSea is about to have their crown knocked off, and it's getting very competitive out there. So it's a good project to have on Fuse for sure. I've got to ask about Cozy Cosmonauts though, Rob, because is that like you're using them on the website to identify yourselves as faces? So tell us about Cozy Cosmonauts and the deal there. Are they part of the DAO, or like what's the thing there?
So Jan, who is a member of the DAO, he created Cozy Cosmonauts, and they are, I suppose, the most well-known Fuse network kind of unique.
The OG collection, right?
OG collection, yeah. But it's I think the idea of an NFT just being a PFP or whatever only has kind of, we've moved on from there.
Yeah,
now.
definitely.
And so Cozy Cosmonauts now is it's growing into an ecosystem. So if you have Cozy Cosmonauts, I think the team are launching other NFT projects, and so if you have a Cozy Cosmonaut, you can get a discount on those other NFT projects and things like that. So it's kind of growing into a launch pad, which I think all NFT projects need to move away from just PFPs and grow into a bigger ecosystem. So we've got some kind of interesting one. There's one called Amazing Horses, which has got a staking and racing type of ideas. Just make it a bit more fun, a bit more gamified. Yeah.
Well, there's a game on Ethereum based around horses. I can't remember the name of it now. It's basically horse racing, and you bet with crypto. It's one of the most popular dApps on the network. Like people like that kind of stuff. Like I think utility has played a big part in what dApp creation has turned into. Like we were talking about DeFi summer, everybody went a bit wild for that. But my personal opinion is it's all a bit of a distraction away from the end goal, which is real world projects delivering change in the world a little bit. Like yield farming is not going to take us to the next evolutionary step. It's cool, but people being able to pay with stable coins, that is going to take us to the next evolutionary step. So yeah, I think it's quite important to have a variety there, right? But I like Cozy Cosmonauts. They feel to me like the OG crypto punks of Fuse. Like I don't have one. Maybe I should scoop one.
Really? Oh, you need to get yourself one.
Yeah, they're reasonably priced, so I should definitely consider it for sure. All right. There's other things as well, Mark. So you've got fingers in different pies. So you've got the FuseDAO pie, which I assume is kind of one of your tastiest pies, but you've also got what's it called? Sorry, your other project,
Fuse Prime.
Fuse Prime, sorry. So you've got Fuse Prime, then that sits aside, right? Tell us about that. What's that about?
So Fuse Prime, that's essentially the nodes that we run. So we run validator nodes. Like I say, we were the first external validator node on the Fuse network. And people can stake with us. You can go onto the staking.fuse.io and see our nodes on there. And you can stake with us. And I think the important thing is that we as as validators, we get to vote on governance decisions on the network.
Nice.
And if you go to the FusePrime.com website, you'll see under the governance tab, kind of our ethos, which I've talked about. It's about we're not going to vote for anything that restricts user access, outside of the law, So there'll be no kind of arbitrary use agreement. So we have to sign up to some kind of political or ideological position on anything. I'm not going to vote for any of that. As long as you're not breaking the law, or people don't want to break the law, then that's fine. And I think that's what I want to set. I think that's that's a really important point. I think because I've seen credit card companies have been banning people, bank accounts have been frozen and things like that. And these aren't people who broke the law. These are people who've gone against their user agreements, and I think that's a really dangerous thing, because things like, people are banned on Twitter all the time because their user agreement is so vague. You can post stuff that's on the news.
There's loops everywhere in that, right? Like there's loops. But look at that lady in Saudi Arabia. Someone's just gone to prison for like 30 years almost, haven't they?
34 years.
Like, it's insane.
Yeah, exactly.
The restriction of access, I think, is the key point, right? It's very well put, Rob, actually. But sorry, I've interrupted you, but very well put there. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, so that's it really. So we would never vote for anything like that. So in terms of staking, we run some very good nodes anyway, 100% uptime. So you're not going to lose out on our nodes. But yeah, in terms of governance, that's where I'm coming from. Like, open access. We're not gatekeepers to your access. Nor should we be. That's not for us to decide. That's kind of our kind of position on that. Yeah,
interesting. It's so interesting, because I've just been having so many conversations about this with family members, people that are not into the crypto space whatsoever. And it's so funny when we talk about restrictions. There was an incident where someone was trying to send some cash. It's their money, they're trying to send it over to me so that we can do something here at my place, and it got stopped. It got by their bank. You can't do that. Why are you doing that? Well, it's my money. I can do what I want with it. No, sorry, you can't do that. We don't recognize this, because they're underwriting risk to some level, right? I guess that's the reason. But for the person whose money got stopped, they were just like, it's mine. Yeah. How can you? Why can you? And why are you allowed to just stick your nose into my business like this? I mean, I get it, criminality, whatever, but I almost think that we should be given the benefit of the doubt, like, because then someone else in the conversation was saying, oh, but what if you're a criminal? If I'm a criminal, then find out, track me, do your homework and research, and then come and get me. But if I'm not, leave me alone. Like, it seems very backwards right now. Like, none of us are given the benefit of the doubt. We're all criminals until we prove otherwise, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, there was something on Twitter. Someone tried to take out, I think, $10,000 or $20,000 or pounds or something. I can't remember. And they're asked, is this for drugs or for guns or for an illegal? At the time beginning, it's like, oh yeah, it is. Yeah,
I'm just going to get a couple of machine guns. I'm going to come back and take the rest of your money.
It's kind of a bit crazy, isn't it? What's the point of asking? But anyway, I do agree with you. Yeah,
it leads into a rabbit hole of conversation, I think, those things, but they're quite nice. They're quite important things, I think, to discuss. Like, people being worried about, but then again, people are always concerned. Like when I started talking about MetaMask, and you rightly said there, 90% of people are not going to use MetaMask. They're not going to do those brave things. The moment I start telling people about the fact that I've got this password and seed phrase, and that if I lose it, it's on me, they are blown away. They're like, whoa, that responsibility is whoa. And they're so quick to kind of judge on the problems with that. But then when I say back to them, what do you do when you go on the internet and it says, do you want to save your password? Do you click yes? Most people do. So you're happy to give up everything into a browser, but this idea of having to write down a password scares you. Like, it's so backwards and weird for me. Like, more and more, I'm coming to realize that it's all a bit.
But they're also trusting the banks as well. So they're trusting the banks, and it's like, well, if there's a run on the banks, you can't get your money out. It's not your money. The whole thing in crypto is, if it's not your keys, it's not your money. And so, if your money is in a bank, it's not actually yours. You are beholden to the bank to give it back to you, and they might not do that.
They might not want to,
and it doesn't take a lot for them to say no.
No. Well, that's absolutely right. And we could talk about this for days, I think, but it's the bottom line of all of it is that we need a change. And I think what we're discussing here is that Fuse Network is gearing up for that change. That's what we're about. Like, we're not about launching a million copycat dApps of Uniswap. That's not our vibes. Like, that's not what we're here for. So we're quite different to other networks in that respect. So, Rob, I suppose one question: what projects really get you going? Like, what excites you when I was going to say when a white paper lands on your desk, you're probably just like, oh God, not another one. But what gets you hot under the collar, man? Like, what gets you excited? What kind of projects, or maybe a better question is, what kind of projects are you looking for to come up and be like, hey, we're looking to do something on Fuse? Like, what gets you going?
I think the real things that excite me are the consumer applications that kind of the foundation are looking at. So those are the things that really excite me, actually. So what people are doing, there's a project in Brazil, South America, who we're in conversation with, who have lots of users on a wallet, and they want to kind of incorporate Fuse and things like this. So anything that engages non-crypto users, those are the things that really excite me. So applications that are running on blockchain. Essentially, blockchain is just a big database, you know. So how can we use that? What projects are using this to engage consumers? Those are the things that really excite me. In terms of the work of the FuseDAO, it's hard to know, really, to be honest, what kind of really excites me. That there are interesting projects that crop up. I mean, we've had some nice NFT projects which have got games and things like that. But in terms of, like, do we need another swap function? Maybe not. Maybe not. I think as the network grows,
there's so much swapping that you need to do, right?
I think bridges are good. So All Bridge, we mentioned earlier, they're really good because they bridge out to non-EVM chains. And I think the future we're going to look at, there'll be a few major consensus chains like Ethereum and probably a few others, and then everything's going to be L2s and off-chain wallet-to-wallet transactions. And there'll be kind of non-EVM functions to that as well. So the ability to easily to move funds from chain to chain and around and in an abstracted way is really key, I think. And it needs to be completely seamless and unknown to the consumer. So I think bridging is a kind of key part of the infrastructure stack that Fuse are building. And we've got multiple bridges. I think we've got 8 or something like that.
There's quite a few, but I think you're right as well in what you're saying, is that it shouldn't be like, this is a bridge, look, it can take your tokens and No, it's built into an app that needs that facility, and the customer is literally presented with a few buttons and steps, right? I think, and I also work in the field of dApps a lot, so I could not agree with you more on that UX side of things, that onboarding side of things. They're the dApps that sit at the top of the dApp listings for highest amount of users, for highest amounts of transactions, even the ones that don't even mention blockchain. Like, if you came from space, landed and opened the application, you wouldn't know. They're the ones that are winning. They're the ones that are gaining mass appeal. Because even I always say, if a crypto native, if you explain something so your nan can understand it, the crypto native is going to get it. But if you only explain it for the native, your nan's not getting it, right?
Exactly. And that's what put me off back in the early days of Bitcoin, is that even though I was in tech and I kind of understand these things, when it's going about private key this and mining that, it's like, what on earth is that about? That sounds like some like rocket science level kind of big brain stuff. So it put me off, and if I feel that way, who else? Everyone else.
You get it. You got it, and still it put you off. Like, that's a strong comment, really, Rob, isn't it? That's like, I think it's a bit of an echo chamber in our industry sometimes, where we assume that everybody understands the things that we perhaps understand. And let's be real, between us, we don't understand everything in this industry at all. Like, we're all, when somebody comes up to me and says they're an expert in blockchain, I'd usually call bullshit on it and be like, you can't, too young, and it's too big, and it changes like every week. So do you know about that thing that happened yesterday? No. So therefore you're not an expert. So it gains clarity over time, right?
And I think that's a really good point, because I'm certainly I don't see the whole scope of crypto. It's just too big, too big.
Yeah.
But with time in it, you start to see the trends, and you start to build up a kind of picture of what crypto is and how it works and what the kind of potential is.
Yeah.
And that gives you some type of kind of foundation to kind of base thoughts and opinions on, I think. And I think, so I kind of feel that, but I certainly, when I know we're up to speed with the thousands of projects out there. It's just too many. Yeah.
Too much. It's too much. It's too much. And I don't think there's any shame in that either. I think as you said, it's correct, especially in what you're doing, is to zoom in on the things that interest you the most. Ever since I began this journey, it was all about real world utility. I feel like, as I said earlier, everybody's got a little bit distracted for the past 5 years, basically. And hopefully we'll come back around and talk about these real world cases a bit more, because that's what I wanted to see. I didn't need another Uniswap, so it was more about that for me. But no, fascinating. But Rob, we're getting towards the end of the session. I want to what's two things. Number one, what's on the agenda for FuseDAO for the remainder of the year? What should people be looking out for? Any exciting happenings? Talk to us about what your plans are for the rest of the year. Obviously V2 coming. Any hard date on that? Anything like that we need to
So no hard date. So the Fuse team. So we're working with the Fuse team on developing what that looks like. So like I said, we're going to be working closely with them. There's going to be one entry point for all grant applications, and then we'll work with the Fuse team to decide whether it goes to the Fuse team to manage, or whether the kind of Fuse DAO manage that. So that's kind of coming along. That's forming.
Nice.
So yeah, and I think that's where we are. I mean, I've been on holiday for August, so I've quite enjoyed the downtime. I've been in this for, like I say, 2018, pretty much
solid,
full on, and so I've really quite liked having
needed that holiday, right?
4 weeks off, and it's been really nice actually, because I've been quite in the detail, and just to step back and just kind of see it as a big picture again and get some perspective, re-understand why I'm involved in the first place, what I'm trying to achieve, what I'm looking for. It's all been really key. And I think the most exciting thing for me, is seeing the journey Fuse has been on, and seeing how it's evolved into this position now, which I call Wix for Web3. That's my kind of little kind of thing, hashtag.
You nailed that.
And that's where we get into, it's like developers going to come along, they're going to use Charge Web3, and they're just going to be able to plug stuff in, and there we go, there's your app, and they can go off and use it. And that's what I'm looking for. That's what's exciting, I think. We've got a little bit of a way to go, but I think that's the vision. I think that's unique in the space as well. That's kind of that's really key. I think it's a unique vision in this space, where I think Mark's always, the kind of blockchain and crypto here, Mark's always been looking outside and saying, okay, this is all going on, DeFi, blah 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 blah, all this type of crypto stuff. What I'm out here somewhere thinking about the future. I think slowly, it's coming in, crypto's coming in, and where the vision was is becoming real now. I think that's
it's like the vision became more relevant over time as well. Like Mark had a vision years ago that perhaps most people were kind of ignorant to, but over time it shifted, become more important. And now he's been shouting it for years, and now everyone's like, hey, that guy's been saying this for ages. Like, we should just go and talk to him now. So it feels like I said, a bit of a pivotal moment in our kind of what we're up to here, not just at Fuse, but across the industry as well. And I think this bear market might have happened at a fairly decent time, because it's brought a bit of calm. And like you said, then on holiday, you get to step back, objectify, look at what you're doing a bit more closely. Why am I doing this? What are we doing this for? It's really important, because in a bull run, we are literally running with the bulls, and
it's just crazy.
You're just like, oh my God, when can I stop and have a pint of beer and think about my life for a minute? And you don't get that minute, do you? It's just constant running. All right, cool. So Rob, where can people reach out to you? Where can they connect with you personally? And then where can they also, if they've got projects, what's the channels, what's the processes for people getting involved with the grants and things like that?
Okay, so Telegram is the best place. There are 2 Fuse chats. The main one, Fuse, I don't know the links actually, so I don't know, Ian, if you
What
want
we'll
to put
do
them
is
up.
we'll put them in the description of the video.
Yeah.
Post edit, we'll put those in. So that's all fine. But
So
yeah, if you just want to tell people where to head to, I'll put the links.
yeah, so Telegram, so the main Fuse chat and then the Fuse community chat. Those are two kind of great places
Cool.
to kind of to meet.
Mhm.
In terms of the grants pipeline, that isn't open yet. Okay,
Right.
so there is a Fuse forum, forum.fuse.io, where you could put stuff on. But what I would say is, yeah, contact in the Telegram, and then we can obviously stay in contact and let you know when the kind of grants are open again. So yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. I think, yeah, I'll put those links into the description of the video at the base. So you've got the information there. So if you want to reach out to Rob, that's where you can do that. And as he says, it's not started V2 yet. So
Yeah.
probably best to just kind of begin the conversations for now,
Yeah,
right? Work
exactly.
towards that. Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. Well, Rob, I want to thank you for your time today. You've been an awesome guest. It's been a really interesting chatting with you. It's always kind of, we got onto some topics that I'm very passionate about myself. So it's always a nice.
I think that's a lot of people in crypto are like that, actually. You know, you dig under the surface and everyone's got quite interesting ideas as to what's going on. Yeah,
I think so as well. Like it's we're all here for the same reason, I believe. I mean, well, I believe that people like you and I are here for the same reason. We got excited by the technology and we want to see it make a change, not just make some money. Like that's fine, that's happening, okay, but there's a bigger picture here that we need to focus on and be more serious about, as it were. So yeah, I think it's like I said, it's important time, builder's time to get your head down and build, basically, which is, we all needed it, so it's good.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it from myself and Rob. We will catch up. I'll be here again, oh gosh, probably again next week. We've got another show lined up, shows every week actually. So if you head on over to the Fuse YouTube, you can find everything over there. We've been putting a lot of work into our content recently, and really kind of one of the reasons I do these things, Rob, and I actually really enjoy them, is the first question is to understand who runs these things. Who are these human beings that actually pull the strings at these companies, rather than an abstract piece of data or a brand name? You know, I really like to let the community understand who you are, and what you're all about. I think it's a good thing to do. I think we're all humans and people need to understand who we are, basically. So yeah, that's why we do this. But yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you again to my guest. We'll catch you all very soon. So it's goodbye from me. Rob, last shout from you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much for having me in. It's been great.
No worries. You've been a good guest. Thanks, man. All right. Take care, everybody. See you soon.